Good day, dears. In this video, we will learn how to find the z-value that corresponds to a raw score, and also let us find the corresponding raw score given a z-value. First, in finding the z-value that corresponds to a raw score, we will be using the following formula. If we have a population data, then the corresponding z-value is determined by subtracting the population mean from the given raw score, and the difference will be divided by the population standard deviation. And if we have a sample data, then the equivalent z-score is raw score minus the sample mean. The difference will be divided by the sample standard deviation. Let us have our first example. Given the mean mu 48, this is the population mean denoted by the symbol mu 48, and the population standard deviation, the lowercase letter sigma, 9.42 of a population of numeracy scores. Find the z-value that corresponds to a score of 30. Let's determine the given first. The population mean is 48. The population standard deviation is 9.42. And we have the given raw score is 30. To find the corresponding z-score of the raw score 30, we will be using this formula since we have a population data. Thus, we have z-score is equal to the raw score minus the population mean divided by the population standard deviation. We have the raw score is 30 minus the population mean 48, and the population standard deviation is 9.42. 30 minus 48 is negative 18. You might be wondering, we have a negative value. Don't forget that we can have a negative value for our z-score. And once our z-score is negative, it simply indicates that that raw score is below the population mean or the given mean. And in this case, we are right, okay? Let's have first, 30 minus 48 is negative 18, and 18 divided by the population standard deviation, 9.42, we got 1.91 into decimal places. It's negative 1.91. Therefore, the equivalent z-score of the corresponding z-score of the given score or the raw score 30 is negative 1.31. As you can see, the raw score is 30, the population mean is 48. Then we are expecting that our raw score is below our mean. If that is the case, we expect that our corresponding z-score is negative, and we got it right. It's negative 1.91. Let's have example number 2. Given the mean, it's a sample mean, which is 29, and the sample standard deviation is 5.02. It's a sample of spelling quiz scores. Let us find the z-value that corresponds to a score of 32. In this case, the raw score is greater than the sample mean. Then we are expecting that the z-score is positive or above our mean. Let's do this. We have our formula for sample data. We have the raw score is 32 minus the sample mean is 29 and divided by the sample standard deviation, which is 5.02. We have 32 minus 29 is 3 and divided by 5.02. 3 divided by 5.02, 5.02 is equal to 0.60 into decimal places. As you can see, our z-score now is positive. This is above the mean. The raw score corresponding it is greater than the mean, and we got it. It's 32. Thus, the corresponding z-score of the raw score 32 in this sample data is 0.60 into decimal places. Okay, now let us have finding the raw score that corresponds to a given z-score. Now let us try to derive the formula for it to be easier. We have z is equal to the raw score minus the population mean divided by the population standard deviation. What we know now is the corresponding raw score. Cross multiply x minus the population mean is equal to z times the population standard deviation is z score multiplied by the population standard deviation. And to express this in terms of the raw score, to determine the raw score, we simply move our population mean to the right side of the equation, and this is negative, it becomes positive. Thus, we have the raw score is equal to the product between the given z-score and the population standard deviation plus the population mean. Now, if we have a sample data, then we have the raw score is equal to the product between the z-score and the sample mean plus the sample standard deviation. Wait, let me correct this one. To determine the corresponding raw score in a sample data given a z-score, this must be the z-score multiplied by the sample standard deviation plus the sample mean. Yeah, this is the correct formula. Not spelling raw score corresponds to a z-score of negative 1.34, given that the population mean is equal to 83 and the population standard deviation is 10.25. Remember that our population mean is 83 and the given z-score is negative. Thus, we are expecting that the corresponding raw score is below the mean since it's negative. Let's substitute in our formula. Let's copy this one first. We have what's the given z-score? It's negative 1.34 multiplied by the given population standard deviation, which is 10.25, and plus the population mean, which is 83. Let's use our calculator. Okay, the raw score. We have 1.34 or negative 1.34 multiplied by the population standard deviation, which is 10.25. We got 13.735. 13.735 plus the population mean, which is 83. And we got that's 96.74 into decimal places. Thus, the raw score that corresponds to the given z-score, which is negative 1.34, in this population data, wherein the population mean is 83 and the population standard deviation is 10.25, is 96.74. We are wrong. Why? Because as you can see, we are expecting that the corresponding raw score must be below the given mean. Why? Because the z-score is negative. It is located below the mean. That means the corresponding raw score must be lower than our mean. In this case, it is greater than. Where do you think in our process we did it wrong? It's here. Negative 1.34 times 10.25, it's negative 13.735. And when we add that, we do subtraction, we have 83 minus 13.735. That's equal to 69.27. It's 69.27. Now, we have the raw score is below the mean, 83. Thus, we can say now that we got the correct corresponding raw score of the given z-score. Again, it's very important that we know the concept that when the z-score is negative, then the corresponding raw score must be below the mean. And if it is positive, the corresponding raw score must be greater than the mean. Let us have example number 4. What reading raw score corresponds to a z-score of 0.89, given that the sample mean is 65 and the sample standard deviation is 5.02? If this is the case, then we use this formula. Raw score is equal to the z-score multiplied by the sample standard deviation plus the sample mean. And we have the z-score is 0.89 multiplied by the sample standard deviation is 5.02, then plus the sample mean, which is 65. And we have, okay, we have now 0.89 multiplied by the sample standard deviation 5.02, that's 4.4678 plus the sample mean, which is 65. And we have this is equal to 69.47 into decimal places. Let us check. The raw score is positive. No, the raw score is higher than our sample mean, which is 65. And the z-score is also above the mean. Okay, then we got the corresponding raw score of the given z-score 0.89 in this sample data, 69.47.